this edition of KTN Newsdesk. It's a pleasure to have you with us. My name is Edith Kimani. Bonitunya is not here with me this afternoon, but he is at the Kenyatta International Conference Center, where he's following the proceedings of the Kenya Economic Survey 2013. Details of that coming up shortly. Yesterday, there was a snarl up in Mariakani, and today it has moved to Mlolongo. Sophia Wanuna has those details, and Noah Otieno is standing by in Addis Ababa to tell you what is expected to happen ahead of the AU Summit. All this and more coming up on KTN Newsdesk. Good afternoon. Let's begin our bulletin this afternoon from Addis Ababa, where the heads of states and government from across Africa are streaming into that Ethiopian capital for the 21st AU Summit, which will officially usher in the Golden Jubilee celebrations for the OAU and also the AU. Now, during the Jubilee celebrations, member states will take stock of the past 50 years, acknowledge the contribution of the founding fathers of OAU towards Pan-Africanism, and also reflect on the Africa of today and, of course, the future. Well, KTN's managing editor Joe Aguirre is attending the summit, which will feature President Uhuru Kenyatta as one of the key speakers.
The African Union meeting is part talk and part celebration as the continent marks 50 years of the OAU that has since been renamed the AU. And the ICC question is only one item on the agenda. Many delegates here hope for greater resolve to tackle key problems such as unemployment and poverty.
This conversation cannot be just about sessions, cuts and beating drums and celebrating our Africanity. It's not just about celebrating that which we have gotten right, even though that is important. It's also about very frankly facing each other on what has gone wrong and being resolute in tackling it.
But violation of basic freedoms, such as the raid on a newspaper in Uganda, is raising concern among civil society groups that are seeking to make their voices count on the sidelines of this conference.
If you're going to clamp down on the media in the kind of way that we've seen in Uganda, then citizens have a reason to be afraid, because then you lose the voice, you lose the channels with which you can speak and have your leaders listen to you and articulate your issues.
And they have mixed expectations as the heads of state and government begin to arrive here.
I think the first thing that they should be doing is to reflect on what they've done in 50 years, looking at the good aspect of their work, but also the gap.
Now, the 50th anniversary celebrations come amid a mixed record here in Africa, with economic growth on one hand and big question marks on democracy as well as human rights on the other. And as the African leaders come here, they know they'll be having the onerous task of shaping that African story going into the next 50 years. Joageo, KTN at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, part of the team that is in Addis includes our political editor, Noah Otieno, who will be linking up with in just a short while just to find out what's happening there. Elsewhere, Amnesty International has condemned the Kenya government's directive issued last year, blocking the registration of refugees at the Kenya-Somalia border, and called for an immediate resumption of the services at the border posts. Speaking at the launch of its annual assessment of the world's human rights situation, Country Director Justus Nyangaya said that Kenya must do this in line with its obligations under international law. The assessment mainly focused on refugees and asylum seekers.
The rights of millions, because this particular report for 2012 is about refugees and asylum seekers. The rights of millions of people who have escaped conflict and persecution have been abused. Governments around the world are accused of showing more interest in protecting their national borders than the rights of their citizens or the rights of those seeking refuge within those borders. This failure, both at the regional and international levels to address conflict situations effectively, is creating global underclass. The rights of those fleeing conflict are unprotected. That's what we say.
motorists driving into Nairobi from Mombasa were stranded for hours as trucks blocked the stretch of road between Mlolongo and Athi River towns for more than 8 hours owing to delays at the Mlolongo Weighbridge. Now, the motorists along the highway were forced to line up behind the trucks, which blocked a 20-kilometer stretch from Mlolongo town all the way down into Athi River as they waited their turn at the Weighbridge. Look at that traffic. And also affected were commuters using the highway from Lower Eastern into the city. The senior superintendent of police attached to the traffic headquarters, that's Peter Mwangangi, ordered a number of trucks to pass without entering the Weighbridge in order to ease the traffic. Now, Mwangangi cited corruption at the Weighbridge that is manned by a private company as one of the causes of inefficiency, while the Kenya Long Truck Driver Union faults the Weighbridge staff for negligence and delay. They now want the government to intervene. The incident comes just a day after a similar snarl-up was witnessed at the Mariakani Weighbridge as truck drivers protested the move to charge them for cross weight and axle load. Well, Sophia Wanuna hopefully is not caught up in that traffic, but she's following that story in Mlolongo and now joins us from there. Sophia, I mean, this is the second day we're seeing such an incident. Yesterday in Mariakani, today in Mlolongo. What is the solution according to the people on the ground?
And they are given a receipt and allowed to continue. Delania, how long?
Sophia. All right, we seem to have a problem with that connection, but we will get back to her when the connection is rectified. But to Garissa County, where police have launched yet another manhunt for a gang that killed 5 people in the area. 2 men were shot dead on Wednesday evening, just after 6 o'clock, 10 meters from the administration police camp. On the same night, 3 security guards were gunned down while on duty at the IFO market. Northeastern Police Boss Shalton Mureithi says his team is pursuing a gang suspected to be behind these attacks and assured residents of their security despite these recent attacks. Insecurity in Garissa has been a major headache for security agents, with a dusk-to-dawn curfew put in place to curb such attacks. Officers from the Kenya Copyright Board today raided several shops in downtown Nairobi as they stepped up the war against piracy, which denies local artists hundreds of thousands in earnings from royalties. So if you're one of those people who buy 50 bob DVDs, then you should be warned. They raided various shops which have series, movies, music videos and CDs which are being pirated and sold on the streets without the authority of artists who have composed them. The Copyright Officers, accompanied by several police officers, confiscated copies of KTN's Jicho Pevu, which has been selling like hotcake along streets of Nairobi. Now, the latest episode of Jicho Pevu, which is Gururi ya Saitoti, has been on high demand since it aired on KTN a couple of months ago. Several people, including hawkers, were arrested in the early morning raid and will be arraigned in court soon. We now have Sophia back on the line. Remember, she is coming to us from Mlolongo, where there's been a major snarl-up following what we're told is because of the Weighbridge. People protesting, saying that corruption is a major cause, while some people are saying that it's inefficiency. Well, Sophia Wanuna has all the details. Miss Wanuna, what do you have for us? Sophia, I didn't hear your answer the first time. Could you please just give us, rather bring us up to speed on what's happening?
Thank you very much, Edith, and a good afternoon to you. We are here at the Mlolongo Weighbridge. It's right behind me, and this is where the trucks are being weighed as they pass through. They're getting their slips if indeed they are under the legal weight limit. Now, this is one of the weigh bridges that has been causing a lot of heavy traffic snarl-ups here on the Mombasa highway, and of course that's been a huge and great issue of concern. And we've been speaking to the drivers that have been the truckers that are just ferrying some of these goods, and one of the things they've been telling us, Edith, is that the fact that there's just one weigh bridge and that this is a dual carriageway just creates a conundrum for the truck drivers, because then they have to make their way. Those coming from Mombasa have to turn in and come this way, and so at every one moment there have to be traffic police officers stationed at the entrance to manage that traffic flow, with the trucks coming in from Nairobi because they have to first pass by here, and also those coming from Mombasa. So they say just having one weigh bridge is a huge cause of concern, and they're urging the government to construct another weigh bridge, which of course has been in the works since 2008. The then Minister for Roads had said plans were underway to construct another weigh bridge on the other side of Mombasa Road to be able to ease on the traffic, so the vehicles coming from Mombasa can use that weigh bridge. The other, of course, major issue of concern here is corruption. The drivers allege there's heavy corruption going on, and that some of them are asked for bribes to be allowed freeway and to go ahead with their journeys. And of course, one more thing they say that is causing the heavy snarl-ups, the officers that we've been speaking to here, they said there are more and more trucks they're seeing coming through from Mombasa. But this is an issue that has been going on for a long time. It has been a nightmare, especially for the residents of these areas, but it will continue, Edith, unless the government does something about it. And one quick solution to this is to indeed construct another weigh bridge. Right now, as you can see, faster, the process is moving on faster. The Kenya National Authority Highways Authority office right behind me managing the process here at the weigh bridge in Mlolongo. Edith.
Well, thank you very much, Sophia Wanuna. And just from the pictures we've witnessed, it's a 20-kilometer snarl-up from Lolongo all the way into Athi River. But as we had mentioned earlier, the senior superintendent of police attached to the traffic headquarters in that area, Peter Mwangangi, actually ordered some of the trucks to pass through without being weighed, just to ease that traffic. To Eldoret now, where we'll just give you a bit of what's happening. That was in Mlolongo, and in Eldoret, hawkers in the town have rejected relocation orders by the county government that are intended to move them away from the central business district. Now, the hawkers say that the location they're to relocate in, which is in Eldoret West, is too small and away from their target market. They want the Uasin Gishu County government to allow them sell their goods along specific roads within Eldoret town. Speaker of Uasin Gishu County Assembly, Isaac Terer, says they have received the formal complaints from the hawkers, and the Assembly is now deliberating on solutions to the hawking problem.
Pia kuna mswada kwamba vyumba vyote vya biashara katika mji wa Eldoret ipatiwe ile inaitwa facelift ama uso mpya kwa kupigwa rangi, na iwekwe security lights upande wa mbele na upande wa nyuma, ili ku reduce incidences ya usiku kuwa na uhalifu, na pia tunataka mji wa Eldoret iwe mji safi.
The East African Affairs, Commerce and Tourism Cabinet Secretary Phyllis Kandie has assured tourism sector stakeholders that the government, through her ministry, will focus on increasing funding and improving infrastructure in order to achieve the 3 million visitors target by 2017. Now, she was speaking at a cocktail party organized by the Kenya Tourism Federation, and Kandie emphasized the need for to form tourism recovery program and put up mechanisms targeting public-private partnerships, which will be a key pillar towards the attainment of Vision 2030. Now, also in attendance was Member of Parliament for Runyenjes, Cecily Mbarire, who was full of praise for the new Cabinet Secretary and urged her to work closely with the private sector.
I want to tell you, you're in the right place. You will enjoy working in the tourism sector. It's been 5 great years for me, where you begin to appreciate the role that tourism plays in the growth of the nation.
Indeed, the tourism sector is recognized by the government as a key pillar in the Vision 2030. The sector is expected to deliver 3 million arrivals by the year 2017. That have come up with a 10-point plan highlighting the areas that we shall prioritize as a ministry in order to achieve and to surpass the 3 million targets.
The crime wave that has hit the country over the last month has now found its way into Kisumu City. However, the residents of the lakeside city are taking matters into their own hands, and this morning they killed 2 suspected thugs in Kanyameda estate after they were caught fleeing with goods they allegedly stole. At the same time, a councillor who works for a leading research institution in Kisumu is in the news for the wrong reasons after confessing to impregnating a minor under his care. Well, KTN's Fred Omulo brings us these stories making headlines in Nyanza.
After local thugs gained confidence with the recent spike of crime across the country, residents of Kanyameda took matters into their hands and dispatched 2 suspected robbers today at 3 a.m.
Tumeshangaa kitu yenye tumeona leo wajameni kwa hii area yetu. Hii area yetu tulikuwa na area mzuri, sasa watu wenye wamekuja hii wenye wamekuwa hapa hii wageni wametuharibia nchi.
Ilikuwa TV radio ndogo ya betri 2 ambapo hatujui kama ni ukweli iliibiwa.
The incident comes on the back of a spate of robberies that have targeted businesses and homes in the lakeside city. Across town in Kisian Estate, a 15-year-old girl is facing a bleak future after her counselor supposedly defiled and impregnated her.
Mimi kama ni hivyo naomba msamaha kutoka kwa familia. Naomba msamaha kwa kuwa kitu ambao imekuja tu kigafla kusemekana. Mimi ndio nimetenda hiyo kitendo na sioni kama hiyo mimba imetoka kwangu.
Efforts in the community to have the suspect reprimanded have proved futile.
Tumekuja hapa, tunataka haki ya mtoto itendeke, na msichana mwenye anafanya kembe anaitwa Sharon ametufuata tena from kazi, amekuja hapa na anasema hii kesi hakuna mahali itaenda na hata media. Hizo ni picha.
The standard 4 pupil who is now 6 months pregnant was recently diagnosed with sexually transmitted infections but lacks the money required for treatment. From Kisumu City, I am Fred Omulo.
A standard 4 pupil, but from what's happening in Nyanza, let's now go back to Ethiopia, where heads of states have convened in Addis Ababa for the 21st AU summit, which will also double up as a celebration for the 50 years in existence. Well, Noah Otieno, who is our political editor, is now joining us from that region with details of what is happening. And Noah, I know Kenya has some high stakes in this particular summit.
Thank you very much, Edith and Bonnie. With the news desk up there in Nairobi, we are here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, at the African Union headquarters, where right now the closed session of the Executive Council is going on. Remember, last night KTN brought you a story, a developing story from here in Addis, where Uganda, as a representative of the East African community, had brought into the agenda the item of the International Criminal Court and the cases facing Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto at The Hague. Uganda reminded the Executive Council meeting that there was a pending matter at the African Union. Remember, in 2011, in February, the East African Legislative Assembly resolved that they were going to push for the ICC cases against Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto to be referred back to the East African Court of Justice. And last evening, Uganda reminded the AU that the African Union needed to take a common position as AU on the matter of ICC intervention on African matters. The East African community, of course, arguing that ICC interventions in Africa were interfering with sovereignty of Africans. And therefore, what is developing this morning is that we have managed to speak to our sources inside the meeting, and we are told that that matter will come up, might have already come up for discussion this morning, and the ministers, especially the Kenyan delegation inside the Executive Council, will be briefing the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta this evening when Uhuru Kenyatta arrives here on the matter of the ICC. In April last year, 2012, you remember the African Union already asked the United Nations Security Council to push for the ICC cases to be, deferred. But this time around, we expect these ministers, Assembly, that is the Assembly of Heads of States and Government, to take a position as AU that matters to do with international crimes against humanity, like those facing Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy, should be dealt with within Africa itself, preferably within the Court of Justice. And that story is what I will be bringing you details of later this evening. From here in Addis, I'm now Tino, back to you, Edith and Bonnie in Nairobi.
Well, thank you very much, Noah Otieno, whetting up appetites for what he has in store for us this evening. Curiously, we'd want to know whether or how possible it is for countries which have been ratified by the Rome Statute to pull out of the ICC. But we have news that has just come in, and President Uhuru Kenyatta has nominated Mr. Joseph Olelenku as the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government, and Mr. Samuel Kazungu Kambi as Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Labour, Social Security and Services. Now, the President has subsequently forwarded these names to Parliament for approval, and the two nominees will then be vetted by the Parliamentary Committee on Appointments before they are appointed to take charge of their dockets. And this is news just in of the President appointment of Joseph Olelenku as a Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government, and Samuel Kazungu Kambi as Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Labour, Social Security and Services. These are the two positions which had remained vacant, awaiting the nomination by the President. We now take a